We are happy to say hello to Chris Fowler now. Chris, how you doing? Thanks for being with us.
Great, Paul. Excited about this weekend and happy to join you. How you doing?
I'm doing very well. Looking forward to talking about the Buckeyes and the Wolverines here coming up here. But let's start with what I know you watched last night, the brand new college football playoff rankings. Let's start with the view from 10,000 feet. Your number one reaction, what intrigued you the most about what you saw last night?
Not a lot, because I didn't expect a ton of movement. I mean, we've had these weeks where there's seismic shifts and where three of the top four lose, and we have to try to predict how the committee is going to react. And you have weeks where there's not a lot of movement, and I think that this has not been one of the more difficult years to figure out. Would you agree? I mean,
right,
at least
yeah.
not so far. I think a few more things happen. And I've said all along, I thought the decisions at the end of the season might be as difficult as any they've had to make. If you're dealing with a two-loss Big Ten champion, if you're dealing with two-loss teams for the first time really being in that bracket, which hasn't happened yet, if you're dealing with a one-loss potentially Pac-12 champion Washington that's on the outside looking in, that would cause a lot of concern for anybody in that entire conference. So I still think there's some difficult choices ahead, but I think that this week was one of the ones where it wasn't as difficult.
Chris, if you were on that committee and you had a vote, what would be your number one criteria? Resume, how you're playing right now, one-loss record? What would it be?
It wouldn't be the last two. How you're playing right now is an important thing you factor in, but it wouldn't be the first thing you look at, Paul, because this is still a regular season that means something. And what happens in September and October may mean less when you evaluate a team at the end, but it's not insignificant. And I think that the four best teams is a very simple mandate. Now, how you arrive at that is different, but I think that the football guys on there tend to think, who would you not want to play at the moment? And I think that has some value, but you have to factor in a resume, don't you? Because you have to look at metrics. You have to put that into the equation. Otherwise, it would render the first part of the season meaningless. When people say USC belongs in the playoff, they're certainly in the camp that believes that, right now with Sam Darnold at quarterback, with the defense coming together, that's a nasty team to try to face. And while I agree with that, I still have a problem, with just rolling off three losses that they have. I mean, I never imagined that we'd be talking about a three-loss team
right
in a four playoff bracket. If you expand to 8, you're talking about teams that have 2-3 losses most years, and that's why a lot of people don't like the idea of expanding.
Right.
I mean, most probably do, but those who don't feel like, well, we don't want to have teams in the playoff that have taken 3 losses. And yeah, USC took on a tough challenge, and they played the ultimate opponent in Alabama early, and that certainly needs to be considered. But it wasn't a competitive game. I call that game, and as much as they've improved, I have a little bit of a hard time saying that that's one of the 4 most deserving or best teams right now.
Yeah, I don't know what stands out more, Chris, the fact that they do have those 3 losses or that one loss felt that bad and everybody saw it. Paul Burmeister talking to Chris Fowler. Chris will be on the call with Kirk Herbstreit on Saturday, Michigan and Ohio State. No change in the top 4, Chris, Alabama, Ohio State, Michigan, Clemson. But you look at 5 through 10, Washington, Wisconsin, Penn State, Oklahoma, Colorado, your old school, and Oklahoma State. Which of those schools 5 through 10 do you look at and think has the best chance of finding its way in?
It's actually surreal to think about Colorado in that group. I don't know if people understand. I'll get back to your question, but as an alum of that school who was there when they were the worst program in the world, then got to cover them winning a championship a few years later, then watch them sink back in and struggle in their first 5 years in the Pac-12, to see them in the top 10, Paul, I can't even explain what that's like. It's incredible. I mean, they're an excellent team, and if they go ahead and take care of Utah, they're a very, very deserving team to be in the Pac-12 championship game. I just can't wrap my head around them.
Yeah,
I think that we covered Oklahoma last week. Oklahoma is an interesting team because they did take on overall probably the most challenging non-conference schedule in Ohio State and Houston. Lost to both of them. We're sitting there at 1 and 2 and written off at that point. And I get that. But, the way they're playing now, defensively, they're still not a great defensive team by any stretch. Offensively, they're among the best, if not the hardest to stop offense in the country right now. And I think that, they just have one game left, home game, Oklahoma State, next weekend, a chance to put a quality win on there and then wait for the Big Ten to shake out.
Yeah.
The weird thing is you had 4 Big Ten teams kind of log jammed ahead of teams like Oklahoma and the others. And I think that, it's going to be fascinating to see how that plays out. Penn State, Michigan State, not an automatic win for the Lions this week. I mean, they're favored for a reason. It's weird because it's the second straight year Michigan and Ohio State play. Then they have to wait and see for a game that begins about when that game finishes. What's going to happen? In the case of last year, they needed Michigan State to lose. That didn't happen. Now they need Penn State to lose to Michigan State. And they won't even know if they're going to win the division or not.
Right.
That's Ohio State. Michigan obviously would take care of it by winning the game. But those teams are going to play each other. Whatever happens, if Penn State wins the division, they're going to collide with Wisconsin. One's going to be out, and the winner is going to be sitting there with 2 losses. And I think the overall strength of the Big Ten would probably put a 2-loss Big Ten team into the playoff over Oklahoma, and that's where the big argument would be, I think, because the Big 12 gets kicked around a lot. The Big Ten is perceived to be the strongest conference at the top.
Do you think that's true, Chris? Do you think that's the case? And I look at it through the lens of a former Big Ten student athlete and quarterback, but for so many years I was defending the Big Ten. They were thought to be 3rd, 4th, 5th best major conference. They're ranked 2, 3, 6, and 7. Is this the best conference in college football right now, the way you see it?
SEC fans would laugh at that notion. I think the boring but sensible answer is wait and see, because I'm dying to see how it plays out in the bowls and in the playoff. But you look at a team like Penn State. Again, tremendous job recovering. They were on the ropes and just about out against Ohio State, and who knows what direction their season would have gone if they hadn't found a way through special teams and pass rush to get back and win that game. They've been a different team since. They're one of those teams you have to sort of overlook. They did lose a game to Pittsburgh, which is, we've seen. Just ask Clemson. It's a pretty good team. They lost on a couple of plays, throws into the end zone. They had a chance to win it at the end. So no disgrace in losing that game. But I don't know if they're the 7th best, 8th best team in the country.
Right,
and I think the Big Ten at the top has two excellent teams in Michigan and Ohio State. Wisconsin has proven itself, and they're trying to play shorthanded. And obviously, whenever LSU is enormous, so it's hard to argue. They deserve to be able to flex. I mean, the Big Ten's been kicked around and laughed at for years by some of the other top leagues, and this is the year for them to flex. But it's a big call to say they got 4 of the top 8, don't you think?
I think so, too. I would like to look at it and call the Big Ten the best conference. I just don't know if you lined up 1 through the bottom. They're having an outstanding year. I'm proud of them, but I don't know if they're better than the SEC. Chris,
But I'm not sure that's how you should judge. I agree with that. I think that's why I said top, not top to bottom, because I think that the SEC still has good depth. I think the middle of the SEC is softer than we've usually seen, and there's just it's deemed to be Alabama and the rest, and we'll see how much of a fight Auburn can put up in that game. But boy, I mean, there's no doubt. It's indisputable that it's a down year for the SEC. There's no debating that. It's just whether or not the overall depth of the league is still at the top.
Most important question, the most significant one here, Chris, for the last. Better Big Ten quarterback in the 90s, Kirk Herbstreit or me? That is funny.
Man, do I go with the correct answer or the guy I have to work with every week? I don't know. Which,
there you go. Enough said. I think we should stop right there. I appreciate that response. Very well done, Chris. Thank you. Well, hey, good luck. Good luck sitting next to Herbie for 3 or 4 hours on Saturday.
It's going to be intense. It's going to be to do game day for many years. This is my first game calling Ohio State, Michigan, but I obviously did game day a lot of times. Yeah. When we were there and sitting between Kirk and Desmond, it's a little bit of a crackling tension. I'm telling you, it's real.
Yeah.
It's very, very real. And I'm looking forward to getting inside the stadium and sort of feeling that tension on a huge scale, because I've been in the ballpark for a couple of Ohio State Michigan games where it's just been incredibly tense.
Is it different for Herbie?
To be a fan of those two?
Yeah.
I think it is, yeah. I think it could not be different. I mean, he was a captain. He played him. He's very unbiased when he does his call.
Sure.
But I think you could feel the energy. Maybe Colorado will make the Rose Bowl, and I'll call the Rose Bowl, and I'll get a chance to experience what that's like.
Yeah.
But I think that that's one of the features of this game is that it's a very modern landscape with the playoff in play, but it goes back to the early days of the sport, and that's what's timeless about it. And and that is, how desperately hungry Michigan is to break through, and how absolutely determined Ohio State is to not let them do that, and to keep their thumb on Michigan. It's one of the most one-sided eras in this rivalry, something that surprises people who are on the outside and don't realize how dominant Ohio State's been. But
right.
But you can just feel it from Michigan side. This is with all those seniors, Paul, all those guys that you saw when they played Iowa, who were disappointed in themselves. This is a chance at redemption, not only for that game, but for the last few years. And you can really feel it when you talk to those guys.
Yeah, I got to spend some time with you in Iowa City before that game, and obviously they lost to the Hawkeyes. They struggled last week against Indiana. What's gone missing for Michigan the last couple of weeks that was so much there the first part of the season?
The dynamic offense. I mean, I think the game we saw in Iowa, they just missed the downfield shots that they were making. And as you know, as well as anyone, when you have that style of an offense and you're gonna grind away, the success rate on the downfield shots, which when Spate was healthy and throwing the beautiful deep balls, was really high.
Right.
I mean, that makes a difference. I think when you watch Michigan play, not every play, but the overall philosophy is a lot like what you see on Sundays. And it's hard to win on Sundays if you don't hit those downfield shots when they're there. And they didn't in that game. The offensive line did not look like it had against a lot of people. I think they would have a right to be disappointed in their line play on both sides. And then it was a very, very constricted performance against Indiana. I mean, some tough elements at the end of that game.
Sure.
O'Korn trying to work his way in and play, but the offense was stagnant, stale, not very dynamic. That's gonna all have to change in a big way.
Yep.
Because don't you think it's important which coach is going to call a bold game? If you're going to try to grind away and play single wing football, if you're Ohio State,
yeah.
or hand the ball off and punt if you're Michigan, play field position and all that stuff, and that's going to be tough to move the ball in either defense. I think whichever offensive staff frees itself up, takes some risks, and connects when they have the chances for those chunk plays.
Right.
It goes a long way to win. But I'm really intrigued to see how the game is called.
Chris, you're going to be at the center of it all. You got a great seat. Look forward to hearing your call. But enjoy Michigan and Ohio State. Happy Thanksgiving, and thanks for spending time with us.
Same to you, Paul. Have a great holiday and enjoy it.
The Dan Patrick Show, weekday mornings on Audience.